Keeping people, property, and the environment safe from harm is the purpose of emergency management and is a shared responsibility. Emergency plans exist at every level of government and are required by legislation. In this section, we'll take a quick look at these areas of emergency management: government legislation, government structure, and shared responsibility. This will give you a glimpse of the bigger picture. It will introduce you to the laws behind the structure, including specific laws in the Northwest Territories, and to the importance of the different levels of responsibility in managing an emergency.
Northwest Territories Emergency Management System is based on the Emergency Management Framework for Canada. That framework was designed and approved and organized and developed by all the provinces and territories in conjunction with the federal government.
The National Emergency Response System is a system set up to support and coordinate actions with various levels of government, the private sector, non-governmental organizations, and other stakeholders to respond to emergencies. At the federal level, there are two pieces of emergency legislation: the Emergency Management Act and the Emergencies Act.
Emergency management in Canada is very much a shared responsibility through all levels of government. So from the federal perspective, we have an Emergency Management Act that came into play in 2007. And that's given us the legislative framework to be able to go forward to say that we have a minister that's responsible for emergency management and delegates all the responsibilities to the departments so that they're able to respond and assist territories or provinces in their time of need. Usually emergencies are handled at the local level, and if the event escalates to the point where federal assistance is needed, then it could be requested through the territorial government.
The Emergencies Act authorizes the federal government to take special temporary measures or invoke exceptional powers in national emergencies such as acts of terrorism or a pandemic, in international emergencies and in war, as well as to support a province or territory in public welfare or public order emergencies. As a community, the legislation which concerns you the most is at the territorial level.
The government of the Northwest Territories' involvement in emergency management starts with the Civil Emergency Measures Act, which is administered by the Department of Municipal and Community Affairs.
This act states that it is the responsibility of the local authority or community government to appoint a committee and a coordinator who are responsible for preparing emergency plans and programs at the community level.
I'm really glad that everybody is here today. As you know, it is a responsibility of all community governments to have a community emergency plan.
The mayor or chief and SAO or band manager and local council are responsible for leading the development of emergency management within their community. Community governments pass bylaws to approve the community emergency plan to help them deal with emergencies. The Act also covers declaring a state of local emergency. This is a formal declaration which gives the local government certain special temporary powers. It also lets everyone know that there is a serious threat or emergency in the community. The Act states that during a declared state of local emergency, the local authority can take private or public property to combat the emergency. It can require people to provide their expertise or remove or destroy structures or equipment to prevent a disaster. It allows the community to request or borrow money to pay for expenses caused by the emergency, and it also offers some legal protection to the community. While it is important to have legal and policy frameworks in place, being prepared to manage an emergency is a shared responsibility. It is not just the responsibility of governments, but their partners, industries such as the Power Corporation, telephone companies, ferry services, and other essential services, as well as citizens.
Everyone has the responsibility to be prepared and to work together in the event of an emergency.
In your community, each person has a responsibility to know what to do in the event of an emergency and to help out in whatever way they can. Everyone needs to be familiar with local emergency procedures. Cooperating with those in charge and following directions is very important during a crisis. Staying well away from the emergency site, especially with vehicles, can help the responders to do their job more easily. And not using your cell phone will help to keep vital communication lines open for the responders. During an emergency, each person should have identification, medications, personal items and supplies with them, as well as any necessary documents such as birth certificates or insurance policies. Care of pets may need to be considered, especially if there is an evacuation. It is important to help others in your community with whatever resources you might have available, whether that is knowledge, equipment, supplies, or just to lend a helping hand to someone who needs it. During an emergency, it may take some time for help to reach your community, so it's best if people know how to take personal responsibility for their own immediate safety and care. When people can take care of themselves and stay safe from harm during an emergency, it places less demands on others. While every community needs to know how to handle an emergency on their own, if necessary, they can call on help from other levels of government. In the event of a territorial-wide emergency, such as an infectious disease outbreak, a widespread power outage, or forest fires across the communities, the Territorial Emergency Response Committee, or TERC, would set up a Territorial Emergency Operations Center, or TEOC. This same structure exists at all levels of government in the Northwest Territories. This means that there are also 5 regional emergency response committees who would operate 5 regional emergency operations centers in the Inuvik, Sahtu, Dehcho, North Slave, and South Slave regions. At the community level, there would be a Community Emergency Response Committee, which would operate a Community Emergency Operations Center. It's basically the same structure at each level of government. It is set up this way so that no matter what the scale of the emergency, local or across the territories, the Northwest Territories is prepared to deal with an emergency, wherever you live. All of these government structures and the government legislation we've mentioned, from the national level on down, exist to ensure that Canadians are protected and prepared for an emergency. These responsibilities continue down to the personal level. We all need to help one another and work together during difficult times. During an emergency, we depend on one another more than ever.
If we have the good communications in our communities with the regional level and territorial level, it helps a lot more. It makes our job a lot easier.